Hello lovelies, thank you once again for coming back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be learning how to make this beautiful turban design. If you are new to this channel and you haven't subscribed to this channel, please kindly do me well by clicking on the subscribe button and also on the bell icon. This is one channel that is loaded with lots of detailed tutorials that you wouldn't want to miss out on. Materials used include plain raw silk fabric, flowered raw silk fabric, fiber, wadding, measuring tape, scissors, matching color of thread and needle. And in place of these fabrics, you can use any other fabric of your choice. For this tutorial, we are working on a turban cap which has a unique pleated band. It has a base which is lined, then it has two padded design on it. Now you can try to add a handle to yours, you can try to do without the handle, but I'll be adding a handle to mine. Okay, another thing is that I'm working with raw silk fabric. Okay, two types of raw silk fabric. I'm working with the plain raw silk fabric and the flowered raw silk fabric. So I'm working with these two types of raw silk fabric. You can use the plain fabric for yours, or you can use the flowered fabric for yours. Just depends on what you want to get. So now I'll go ahead to state out the measurements I'm going to be using. Now for the band, I'm using the plain raw silk for it, and then what I have here is 30 inches for the length, which is the head circumference on the stretchy part of the fabric, by 14 inches for the width. 30 by 14 inches, that is it for the band. Now for the base, the inner part of the fabric is going to be the plain raw silk, while the outer part of the fabric is going to be the flowered raw silk. I'm making use of 25 inches for the length, that is the head circumference, by 14 inches for the width. 25 by 14, two different pieces of fabric. That is if you are lining. Lining is optional. Now in addition to this, I have the fabric for the handle too. Remember, I also said that the fabric for the handle is optional. So I have two different pieces of fabric for the handle. The measurement is 5 inches by 12 inches, 5 by 12 inches, cut out twice. And what I did was to fold my fabric into two equal halves and then make a slant cut at the edge. That is for the handle. Then I have the fabric for the padded design. So I'm going to be using both the plain and the flower poly for it. For this, the first one on the base is going to be the plain fabric. The first one on the base, I have 28 by 10 inches. 28 by 10 inches. And for this particular fabric, I'm going to be padding it using the thick wadding. The thick wadding or padded, I'll be using to pad it. So after sewing, we'll get the measurement for the padded. Then for the one on top, the second step, I'm using my flower poly and I'm having 8 inches for the width by 28 inches for the length. I'm going to be using fiber to pad this, and after sewing we'll get the measurement for the fiber for it. So that is that. Now coming to sewing, the fabric for the padded design, 2 in number, as well as the fabric for the handle, 2 pieces in number. You fold it into 2 equal halves with the fine side inside and the wrong side outside, and then you stitch it down from one end to the other end. That's for these 4 pieces of fabric. So after sewing, you can go ahead to turn your fabric inside out. Now the fabric for the band is a pleated band. It looks like a V shape, but it's not actually a V shaped band. So what we'll do is that I'll start by folding in this edge. I'll fold it in twice, and I have it this way. I'll stitch it from one end to the other end, then I'll flip it over to this other side, and then I'll go ahead to start pleating my fabric gradually from one end to the other until I get to the end of the fabric. So I'm expected to get 3 or 4 pleats depending on my sewing of my pleating allowance. I'm going to stitch all this and then I'll get back for us to continue. At this point, I have my band and as you can see, I've sewn it down from one end to the other. Now when you are making your pleated band, at times the edge don't come out to be equal, but then I've trimmed it off for both ends, and this is what I have. So I'll fold my fabric into 2 equal halves. This is the band. I'll fold it into 2 equal halves, and I have this right here. I've folded my band into 2 equal halves, and if you look carefully, there are 2 sides to this band. There is the folded part at the top, which has the first step, and then there's this fraying end at the edge. This part is on the base that has the last split. So that is how, so you just place your fabric this way, ensure both ends align, and now we'll get our measuring tape. So when we get our measuring tape, from the top, which is folded where we have the first split, we measure out 1.5 inches and mark. So this is my 1.5 inch mark. That is from the top. And then from the base where you have this fraying edge, we'll measure 1/2 inch and mark. Now what we'll be doing next is that we'll be making a connecting line from this 1/2 inch, from this 1.5 inch mark to this 1/2 inch mark down to this tip here. So if you look carefully now, you will see we have made a connecting line, 1.5 inch, 1/2 inch. So I will now take this down to my sewing machine, and I will stitch this down this way. Okay, remember the top part for your 1.5 inch has the first split, while the last part is the fraying end that has the last split, and that is where your 1/2 inch mark is coming from. So if you look carefully, I've made my sewing stitch at this edge. This is the back, so when I open it up, it's going to be like this. The next thing I'll do is that I'm going to be trimming off this excess fabric here. So after trimming off my fabric, I have it this way. You want to be very careful while trimming off this excess part so that it doesn't affect your sewing stitch. Then we're supposed to take this to our weaving machine to have it weaved, but if you do not have access to your weaving machine immediately, it's still okay. I'm going to be making use of lighter. So that is it for that. The next one we're going to be doing is that we're going to be working on the base, and for that I'll get the fabric for my base. Remember, we're working with 2 pieces because it's going to be lined, and we're using different pieces of fabric. Okay, the flower poly is for the outer side, while the plain raw silk is for the inner part. So starting with the outer part, I'll get my flower raw silk, fold it into 2 equal halves so as to get the middle of my fabric, and then I'll go ahead to make a notch at the middle of my fabric. I'll open it up and place it with the fine side facing me. Then I'll get my band and place it on my raw silk fabric, fine side facing fine side. Then I'll get the fabric for the inner parts, fold it into 2 again, get the midpoint and make a notch at the midpoint. Then I'm going to place it on my band, fine side facing the fine side of the first piece of raw silk fabric. Having done all this, I'll take this down to my sewing machine and stitch it down from one end to the other end. So right here I have my fabric already sewn. I've sewn it from one end to the other end, and I'll later come back to trim off the excess fabric. So what I'll be doing is I'll be turning this inside out to the fine side, and this is the fine side. I have my fabric this way. So the next one we're going to be working on is the padded design, which is going to be coming on it. Okay, So right here I have the fabric for my padded design here. I've sewn it and I've turned it inside out. This is how it is. And then remember, for the plain fabric we're using the thick wording, while for the flowered fabric we're using either foam or fiber. So I said to get the measurements, you sew your fabric, turn it inside out and then measure it out. For the plain fabric, for our wording, our thick wording, what I'm having here as the width is 4.5 inches. So I'm going to be cutting 9 inches so that I can fold it into two. Then for the flowered fabric that was 8 inches for the width, what I'm having here is about 3.5 inches. So I'm going to cut out 3.5 inches for my foam or my fiber. Now this is my wording already cut out. I cut out 9 inches. So when I fold it, I'll be having 4.5 inches. I'm going to insert this inside my fabric. Then I have 3.5 inches for my foam. You can also decide to use fiber. I'm going to pass this inside my fabric. I'll do this off camera and then get back. Now if you look carefully, you will see that I've inserted my foam and my wording inside my fabric. Now I failed to state out the length for both the wording and the foam. I'm making use of 25 inches for the length. So fabric is 28, the padding material inside is 25 inches. That is because I don't want it to get to the very end of the fabric. There have to be allowance for sewing. Now that is done, place one on each other. Okay, this bigger one is the one directly on the base, while this smaller one, the flower material, is the one on top. Then get the fabric that is for your turban cap and then go ahead to place the padded material on it. So this is it. And then you find out that the padded material, especially at the end, is a bit bigger than the fabric for your cap. That's still okay. Insofar there is allowance at the edge, it doesn't really mean. So go ahead to set it in place. Get your pin and then use it to hold down everything together at each end. And then you'll find out that when you're done holding down this edge with your pin, come back to this edge, it's a bit bigger, so you pull it in and then also pin this edge down. So it looks as if the padded material is bigger than the cap, but it's perfectly okay. It has to be a little bit bigger, so after sewing it can sit very well on the cap. But if you should decide to follow the way it is positioned this way to measure out your fabric and sew, at the end of the day the padded material is going to be smaller than the cap. So now that we are done with that, when you now get it this way with the excess at the middle of the cap, you can now go ahead to fold your fabric into 2 equal halves, and then I'll flip it over to this side. When you fold it into 2 equal halves, go ahead to place it down on your machine and stitch it down from the band to this end and then to this other end. So I have my fabric here. As you can see, I've sewn it down from here down to here and to the end. The next thing I'll be doing is I'll be making the running stitch, and the running stitch is going to come immediately after the band down to this very end. I'm done making my running stitch. I have it this way, and then I'll flip this over to the front side. This is the back view, then this is the front view. This is the unique band, and this is the padded design. So let me arrange it in place properly. The next thing we'll be doing is we'll be working on the fabric for our handle, so that we can add the handle to our piece. Now right here I have the first piece of fabric for my handle. I've folded it into two and I've sewn it down from one end to the other end. This is the second piece of fabric which I've turned inside out, and then I'll get my turban cap. I'm going to now get the middle of my turban cap this way. This is the middle point, so I'll just straighten it out like this. I'll get my measuring tape, and from the middle point measure out 8 inches and I'll mark it down. I will also repeat the same thing for the other side. So I'll flip over to this other side. I'll measure out 8 inches and I will mark it. Then I'll check to ensure that the 8 inches on this part aligns with the 8 inches on the other part. Now that that is done, I will get the first fabric for my cap, that is the handle. First fabric for my handle, I'll fold in the fraying edge. Then I'll get my cap, position it on one side of my cap. So this is the fraying edge, and then I'm going to place it at that 8-inch mark this way, and I will stitch this down. After stitching it down, the handle will now come down like this. The same thing is applicable to the second side. For the second piece of fabric, I will get it, then place it at that 8-inch mark and then stitch it down, okay, so that after sewing the handle comes down like this. So I'm going to finish up and then get back to show us the final outcome. So right here I have my fabric already sewn. The handle has been sewn on both sides. So this is it. So this is my turban cap with the unique band, handle and padded design. And with this, dear creatives, we have come to the end of today's tutorial. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, also like, share and leave a comment in the comment section. Bye for now and see you in our next tutorial.